That's me on the left in 1996 with a Nassau Yi woman from my mother's ancestral home near the borders of Sichuan and Yunnan province in China. But hold on, that's also me, my graduation photo from high school in North Brunswick, New Jersey, just 9 years earlier. So when I hear that tiring question over and over, where are you from? While some people may expect me to answer with the name of an Asian country, I often will answer New Jersey. So I can't really talk about my work without telling you a little bit about the journey that brought me to do what I do today and the support that I received along the way. Long story short, my parents both emigrated from China. My mother is from Southwest China's Yunnan province, and my dad from Northeastern China's Shandong province. They both came to the US for college. Dad was getting his postdoctorate in engineering at Johns Hopkins University, and mom was a voice major at the Peabody Institute of Music, also at Johns Hopkins University. So they actually met on campus in Baltimore. Fast forward, I was born, youngest daughter of 3. Fast forward again, I eventually graduated, and I should say barely graduated, from the University of Virginia with a degree in French language and literature. Shortly after graduation, I went to China on a tour for Taiwanese American students, and in Kunming, the capital of Yunnan province where my mother was born, we visited a university for ethnic minority nationalities where the dean invited me to teach English. At home in Charlottesville, at the time, I was only waitressing and working at a jewelry store, so I went home, packed my bags, and returned to Yunnan. While in Yunnan, I discovered that my great-grandfather, Long Yun, had not only helped establish the university where I was teaching, but was a member of the powerful Black Yi tribe and governor general of Yunnan during the transitional years of World War II. So in Yunnan, I picked up a passion for photography to document life there, to show my family and friends. My camera kept me company, and I stayed in Kunming for 3 years. It was these experiences that helped me find a new sense of pride and identity and encouraged me to pursue a profession as a photographer and artist. These are all photos I took in Yunnan around 1995 to 1996, when my Mandarin language skills were good enough for me to travel all around the province. These photos, including the photo previously, are photos of Yi people that were taken in the greater Liangshan Mountains of Sichuan province, my mom's ancestral home. I stayed in Yunnan for 3 years and then decided to go back to school and get my MFA at the Rochester Institute of Technology. My thesis project at RIT was a series of photo collages presented in large light boxes. The light boxes were given to me from my sister when she was video store manager at Tower Video in New York City, and the boxes were being updated. This is Golf and Games in 2 4-foot light boxes. After grad school, I exhibited in Brooklyn, and not only was transportation difficult, particularly going through the Holland Tunnel where I broke off my side view mirror trying to pass another truck, but storage then became a problem. I was looking for ideas on how to make more compact portable work. I thought about making a game with photos like Life or Chutes and Ladders, where it all folded up nicely into a box. At a Borders bookstore in Rochester, the pop-up book section was right next to the game book section. I came upon Robert Sabuta's Wizard of Oz pop-up book and was instantly enamored. About that time, I found a call for entries for an artist residency at the Alden B. Dow Center for Creativity and proposed that I wanted to learn how to make a pop-up book. And while I had no experience making any pop-ups at the time, the residency encouraged experimentation and uniqueness. I focused on the honesty, humility, and enthusiasm tenets in my application that were part of Dow's way of life cycle. That residency led to a series of more residencies where I focused on learning paper engineering by taking apart dozens of commercially produced pop-up books and applying my newfound knowledge to photos from my thesis project. This is one of my first pop-up books that I made using photos I had already had from my thesis project. I was volunteer photographer at Sarah City Workout Mania in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. I titled this pop-up Balls, and it was one of a series of 21 pop-up books that I did over 4 consecutive residencies in 2004. So after doing many residencies, around 2007, I decided to apply for a Fulbright fellowship. And my project was to create a photographic pop-up book of the 25 ethnic minority groups of China's Southwest Yunnan province. So in 2008, I went back, and my rough initial intent was to create an accessible commercial publication to create awareness of these peoples, but my path took another route as I began creating handmade small editions. Yunnan is China's most southwestern province, sharing borders with Tibet, Burma, Laos, and Vietnam. It has snow-capped mountains to the northwest and tropical rainforests to the south. It's so rich in natural resources that it has the largest diversity of plant life in China. And this diversity extends to its population as well. According to the most recent census conducted in China, which was in 2010, of the 1.3 billion population of China, less than 9% were ethnic minority nationalities. So I ziplined back to China over the Angry River. And while China had, life had changed drastically in my previous trip, I was there in 1990. I left when I was in 1996. Now in 2008, there are, several Walmarts, there's a Prada, there's drive-through McDonald's, there's Haagen-Dazs. So life had changed a lot. But I found that if you just traveled a couple of hours away from the city, I could find life as it seemed back in the 90s. So this is a photo at a fire festival of the Ashi people. The Ashi are a branch of the Yi. There are 27 branches of the Yi minority, of which my mother is. And annually, they celebrate their fire festival to honor the wizard who supposedly brought them fire. Legend has it that once when the naked Ashi were hunting, heavy rains came down, sending them to shelter under an old tree. An old wizard, Mudong, appeared, rubbed some dry wood together, and started a fire. The Ashi were no longer cold and learned how to cook food. So although originally my intent was to create pop-up books because they were somewhat portable and small, but somehow I already started creating books that bigger and bigger. And actually, you'll see towards the end of my presentation that I started to get a hold on that by creating a smaller pop-up book. This is a photo of a Dai minority vendor I took during their annual water splashing festival. Their homes are in a lush subtropical area in southern Yunnan province near river basins with exceptionally fertile soil. One of the least known but most flavorful culinary treasures in China, their food is similar to Thai food in that it combines sour, spicy, salty, and sweet flavors, but with its own distinctive style. So this is a photo of the pop-up that I created with those photos from the water splashing festival. This book is about 36 inches wide. And here is a screenshot of some of the elements that would go into a pop-up like that. It's cleaned up. My actual files don't look like this, but so you can see that there's a border around the photos because I print the photos, mount them either to more photos or to perhaps a heavier weight paper or a cardstock, and then I hand cut around the image pretty precisely. The Wa live along the borders of Southwest China and Myanmar. They regard the wooden drum as a divine tool that has exceptional power and is the symbol of existence and prosperity. Wa women uninhibitedly swing their long, black, shiny hair to the beat of the drums. Their beat is slow and fast, representing anger and sadness, anxiety and happiness. So for any of you that are familiar with paper engineering, this pop-up is just created with a series of opposing 90-degree angle folds. These are images of a Dulong family. And Kaifuna lives along the Dulong River in Northwest Yunnan province along the borders of Tibet and Myanmar. Using bamboo needles and ink made from ashes from the bottoms of pans, Dulong girls got their tattoos at puberty, and each clan had its own set of designs. The origin is not clear, but some claim it was to make them unattractive to powerful neighboring tribes who enslaved the Dulong and went after the women. Dulong women believe that their tattoos resemble butterflies and that the souls of their dead turned into butterflies. As of 2013, there were only 28 Dulong women left. Tattooed Dulong woman, if I didn't mention that. The Sani live in and around Stone Forest and are a subgroup of the Yi. This is a picture of Stone Forest. So if you can read Chinese characters, that says Stone Forest, right to left. And the calligraphy was actually carved following the calligraphy of my great-grandfather, who had helped open the park, which is now actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So if you see on the bottom right, you can see there's a trash can. So you can, it's actually quite large. So Ashima is a Sani girl, and the Sani people live in Stone Forest. Their legend of Ashima is sung from generation to generation and is an inspiration for Sani women today, who refer to it as the song of our ethics. So the base of this book is cross-stitched, following a typical pattern of the Sani people. And so I had decided that I wanted to embroider my own version of the embroidery and use it as a base for the pop-up. But so this is how far I got after 1 year. And I realized that it's not like how I had seen the Sani women in Kunming, near Kunming. They sit, they chat, they embroider, they eat, they sing, whatever. But when I was embroidering, I found that I couldn't do anything else at the same time, and it became very obsessive. So I realized it's not for me. But so this is as far as I got. And then I photographed it, photoshopped it to look complete, and then printed it on Tyvek, and then missed the tactile quality of the cross stitching, and then selectively embroidered on it so that when you feel it and when you look closely, you'll still see some stitching. And I often will edition the books. This book was editioned in 10, and then there's one large copy, which generally I like to make a large version to exhibit. This, so in 2014, I attended an artist residency at the Swatch Art Peace Hotel, which is in Shanghai. And at that residency, there are 18 artists from around the world. And I stayed there for 6 months. And my proposal there was to travel to other minority regions outside in China, outside of Yunnan province, specifically in ethnic minority autonomous regions. So one of these autonomous regions is Tibet. So I went to Eastern Tibet, which is in Qinghai province. Well, not only in Qinghai province, but that's where this video was taken. And thousands of Tibetan monks, pilgrims, and nomads annually attend the Monlam Great Prayer Festival, where a large Tanka Buddha is rolled out and sunned on the mountainside. Their communal prayers spread peace and help all beings overcome obstacles. So it's hard to, I find it very hard to create one pop-up that will share the whole experience. And when you see such a wonderful, amazing experience, makes it even harder. But this was my attempt. And also during the Tibetan New Year, the monks will perform a cham dance. And the Tibetan word cham means dance, and it's performed exclusively by monks. This ritual dance cleanses evil spirits and provides moral instruction to viewers. So for this book, I decided I wanted to try making a star book or a carousel book. What's amazing about this book is if you see it before it's folded up, it is very, very wide. I think it was like 60 inches wide, the prints. Also in 2014, while at Swatch, at the Swatch residency, I traveled to Xinjiang province, which is in China's northwest region, where the Uyghur people live. As its name suggests, Uyghur food features typical and popular cuisine of the Uyghur nationality. In the front left, you see naan bread with traditional designs that are hand punched with a chicken feather stamp. The copper background is a classic kebab grill cart. The dishes are all placed on a traditional tablecloth and are surrounded by grapes from the Turpan Grape Valley. These grapes account for 80% of China's grapes and raisins. Hand-pulled noodles surround the spread. Uyghurs are a Muslim Turkic ethnic group living with China and have been under Chinese control since the 18th century. The majority reside in Xinjiang province, which translates as New Frontier in Mandarin Chinese. Rich in natural resources, the economic development of the region has been accompanied by the large-scale immigration of Han Chinese. In 1949, Uyghurs comprised 82% of the population. The Uyghur population today makes up under half, and hundreds of thousands are detained in re-education camps. Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region is now one of the most heavily policed regions in the world. So also within China, live in Inner Mongolia are the Mongolians, and wrestling in Mongolian is the national sport. For this book, I went to Inner Mongolia for their Nadam festival, which is literally translates as Festival of Three Manly Sports: wrestling, horseback riding, and archery. And what was amazing was there were no photographers there, not a lot of tourists. And if there were tourists, they were generally from the region. And I had such good access to photographs that I had to make a book about wrestling, but I can't say that I feel a connection to wrestling. So I did some research, and I had found that there was a legend about a Mongolian princess who claimed that she would marry any man who could wager 100 horses and beat her in wrestling. She ended up acquiring an army of 10,000 horses and was undefeated. So as a tribute to the woman wrestler who was never defeated, men now wrestle wearing an open vest to prove to their opponents they don't have breasts. So that's a common legend in Mongolia. This is a small version of a book I called Taohua Yuanji, which literally translates as Utopia. And this book, I had decided that when given the opportunity in Philadelphia to create a large pop-up book, I decided I would enlarge this book 1,400%. So here it's 2 feet. And then I'm working on, I worked on a book to make it 21 feet to enter it in the Guinness Book of World Records. So here's the cover. We made the cover out of gator board, which is extremely stiff and lightweight, but very expensive. Just the materials for this cover were about $2,000. And then here's my assistant and I rolling out adhesive back vinyl to make to kind of, you know, bind the cover. And I printed images on a polypropylene material, which is made for outdoor usage, so that it would resist fingerprints and would be waterproof and durable, because I wanted people to go inside of the pop-up book. So this material, the material that I chose is adhesive back. So I printed the images on a 6-foot printer, and then mounted them onto cardboard. So it was interesting because the way that we follow grain, you can follow corrugation on the cardboard, and all of the pieces fit within the largest sizes of cardboard, which I believe is like 96 inches wide. And then here we are opening it. That flap on the top was created because the gallery that I made the book in, there was an air duct in the center. So that flap folds to pass by the air duct. This is the book moved to the Taubman Museum of Art in Roanoke, Virginia, and it's permanently housed there now. And they open it every year during Chinese New Year's. And one other minority autonomous region in China is Guangxi province, where the Miao and Dong people reside. Here's an image of some of their paper cuttings, their embroidery, and their batik. And so I had heard about an origin story of the Miao, which is that butterfly mother gave birth to 12 eggs, which are the origin of all living things, that everything has life. The inside paper cuttings here are inspired by those traditional designs used for the Miao paper cutting, batik, and embroidery. And the base of the eggs, which is that brownish red fabric, is made from hand-woven indigo cloth worn by the Miao and made by their Dong neighbors. The cloth is dyed with wild rose petals, persimmon peels, chestnut shells, pig's blood, and then coated and pounded with egg whites. And here are some images of a cave where a Miao family has been making paper inside for 19 generations. They've been making paper in this cave since the Tang Dynasty, which was about 618 to 907 CE. A nearby spring provides unpolluted neutral pH water, and neighboring mulberry trees flourish. The family learned paper making. Mr. Wang learned paper making from his father and is the 19th generation to continue this tradition. Nothing is wasted as leftover materials are irrigated to the fields, fed to the pigs, or used for firewood. here's an image of how all the parts that go into the finished product. And it's a cleaned up version. The paper that is a scan of mulberry paper that I purchased when I was visiting from that village in 2014. Here's an image of some of the food that we ate in the region, because I wanted you to see that, you know, what some of the typical Chinese cuisine of that region is like. And it's very similar to Yunnan cuisine also. Like in the back is actually a type of ham called Yunnanese ham, which is similar to our Smithfield ham. And then here's the finished paper making cave egg. Every year during the Sisters Rice Festival, unmarried Miao women dress head to toe in their finest silver, weighing up to 40 pounds. Long ago, the Miao carried their wealth in silver as they were forced down from the north. It is their dowry prepared from birth and a symbol of wealth and beauty. The Miao believe that silver represents light, which drives out unwelcomed spirits. Colorful glutinous rice dyed with leaves, berries, and flowers is wrapped in a silk handkerchief with treasures hidden inside, and is exchanged between unmarried young women and men. A pair of chopsticks or red petals represent that the woman also likes the young man. One chopstick or red chili pepper is a sign of rejection. This was actually taken at the Codex Book Fair last month. And then the last project that I wanted to show you is a project that I worked on at the Women's Studio Workshop in Rosendale. It was a book production artist residency where I spent 2 months making a book with staff and interns and the apprentice at there. So this was my proposal. It was a 14 by 21 inch mock-up. And at the time, I actually thought that was small, because my average books are about 17 by 25. But it's based on foot binding, and I titled it Golden Lotus Feet. So golden lotus feet is the term for the ideal size of bound feet. So I met this woman in southern Yunnan province who had bound feet, and she was part of a dance troupe. So that's her feet on the left. On the right is an X-ray of a bound foot from the 1970s in San Francisco. So the ideal bound foot size is 3 Chinese inches, which is about 3.9 regular inches. And because it's referred to as golden lotus feet, I decided I wanted to make my lotus out of lotus paper, which is, if any of you are familiar with Women's Studio Workshop, Chris Patrone is the studio manager there, and she is a very good paper maker. So she came up with a recipe of how to make lotus paper with lotus in it, I should say, using cotton, kozo, and lotus root. So I won't go over that because I just described that to you, but here's a picture of Chris making the paper. And those buckets are showing you that there are different shades of pink in the paper. As a lotus root, the lotus root is kind of white on the, it's got a brown skin, and then it's white, and then it starts to get darker in the center. So that's how I wanted the lotus flower to be. When you do this artist residency, you have a team of not only the studio manager and Erin Zona is the studio director, but you also have interns who are very talented and skilled, and an apprentice. So here's the people that were helping me work on this book. And an advantage of doing this residency was to learn a new process. And so while I usually use inkjet printing, there I was introduced to pronto plate printing and polymer plate printing. So it was quite an ambitious project. And so on the left is the polymer plate printing, and on the right is some of the parts. And then we also ate lotus root snacks to fuel us. And then we also used letterpress instead of digital printing. And so this is a quote. There's an old quote supposedly that goes back to the 9th or 10th century in China. And it goes, if you care for your son, care not if he suffers in his studies. If you care for your daughter, care not if she suffers in her feet. So I decided to use the latter part of that quote in the beginning of our book. We used a do-si-do format or a do-a-do format, which is a book that is attached to another book. And then here's the mock-up as it was before I left, without any of the text. One thing I wanted to mention that at one point in time, half of the population was known to have bound feet. And thank you.
Thank you, Colette. That was absolutely fascinating. I feel like I took a little travel tour of China in addition to the books with all those amazing photographs from all the different regions. It was very astonishing. Beautiful, beautiful. I have a little list of photos here, but I will let other people ask photos if they have something that has popped up. I forgot to look if anybody put anything in the chat. I didn't see anything come through. All right, well, I'll start the questions off and see if anybody comes back. First, on the technical side, are you still cutting all your books by hand?
Not all of them. Those last structures with the eggs. The white paper is cut with a plotter. A plotter is a vector. It's a machine that follows a vector with a little blade versus a laser cutter. And I have one of those that I've had it for over 10 years and have been manually, have always preferred cutting by hand because you can get, just aware, for that Lotus book, I was using magnifying lenses, 2.5 magnifying lenses to cut the parts out. But Now I'm starting to get, what's it called? Tendonitis and carpal tunnel. So I have to slowly figure out ways to use a machine when I can.
And are those like the Silhouette or Brother or Cricut, those kind of things where it scans your image and then sends the little blade around? Is that what you mean by a plotter, or is it bigger than that?
So the one I have is similar to a Cricut, except that it's 24 inches wide.
Wow.
And it's much faster, and it's not as, I guess, user-friendly as a Cricut. You know, Cricut's kind of almost like plug and play. This one you have to, you know, you don't have to, but I use Illustrator, and it has lots of glitches because it's old. But I had a Cricut for a few weeks, and then I decided to return it because it was too slow.
Oh, interesting. I've never had one. I've just seen pictures of them, and I had no idea that there were professional machines that were so much larger, like the 24 inches. So
yeah,
it was when I saw those eggs, I thought, is she still cutting all this by hand? So
no, and I
hear that you modernized.
I did cut while I was at Women's Studio Workshop. I didn't have access to my machine, so I did hand cut them, and I tried watercolor paper. So, you know, that watercolor paper was like 300 grams, and I cut out, I double mounted some of the layers too. And then my thumb started to tingle for the first time. So, you know.
So time to explore. I'm curious, when you said you mounted, what are you using when earlier you said you printed your photos and you mounted them to a heavier weight material so they would stand up? What do you use for your mounting? Is that a spray mount or?
I use a roll mount adhesive by Coda Mount. I think it's called Coda Mount.
So you roll out a big sheet of the adhesive and all your images on one piece of paper.
Yeah, so this is the Coda Mount. It comes in different kinds, but it's double-sided. It's clear. It's a little bit thick, so it actually adds a layer of strength. If I have a photo mounted onto here and then I mount it to another, you know, piece of paper or another photo, this is, you know, it's kind of like some sort of plastic. You can't really rip it, so that way the pop-up won't break when I use this where it's folded, except it's very aggressive. There's no, if you mount something with this and you make a mistake, you have to, you know, redo the whole thing.
How do you activate the adhesive?
Oh, it's active. If you just put the paper on it, that's it.
Oh, so you're not even peeling a layer off.
Oh, you do. The front is
okay.
closed. The back, you just have to peel the back off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Very interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, and Talus supposedly sells adhesive like similar double-sided adhesive like this, but I think it costs a little more. So that's, you know, when I first started doing this, I didn't have much income to buy materials. So a lot of my materials still are on the low end, and then yeah, low price end, I should say, not the. Although this is kind of expensive. This is at last time I checked, it was about $1 a square foot.
And also on the technical side, your big gigantic book, your walkthrough one, it looked like that had a cloth cover on the outside of the gator board. Was that covered in cloth, or was that just cleverly painted, or?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh, your very big book, the one that you can walk in. I I don't think I wrote down the name of it. Anyway, the one that has the gator board, you made the 1400% enlargement of the little book. And so it looked like it was covered in cloth on the outside. Was that just, I was wondering where you got cloth that big, or if that's really not what it's covered with.
So it's covered with vinyl. And vinyl, so vinyl only comes in a certain width, but you actually, the seams were pretty hard to see. And my assistant, who helped me make that book, she worked on the spine, and we got some black fabric that kind of looks like, iris cloth. And she spent, I don't know how many hours making the spine, just like a spine on a small book too. The cover was magnificent. And then we used a heat gun. So if you lay down vinyl and it bubbles, or if you lay it down, improperly, you can't move it because it stretches. So there's a lot of it's somewhat satisfying in a way that you do it, and then you can't alter it, you can't change it. Well, you can redo it though. You can't fix it though. But a heat gun, we learned that I don't know if we had a heat gun or a blow dryer, probably a blow dryer, but a blow dryer would even out, you could remove the bubbles and the mistakes.
Now I noticed that all of your books, large and small, except for maybe not your last Lotus book, they all open from right to left, or I guess you kind of they open reverse of a Western book. Is that a traditional Chinese way of opening, or is that just because you're left-handed, or?
Yeah, it's a traditional way of how Asian books are read. So I decided, I guess when I just started doing it, I just wanted to, someone mentioned to me that it was hard to tell what was in the books. So maybe I should make some kind of signifier of what's inside. So I was like, okay, I'll make a cover. I want it to be like the cover to be completely different than the inside. So hardly anything on the outside and then a lot on the inside. Like don't judge a book by its cover. So I guess when I started making covers, I wanted it to be at least a little bit different. So having them open left to right instead of, or right to left, how Western books are viewed.
Well, and it works because most of your books are the one big presentation. So once they're open, you don't even know. But I noticed every single one you opened that way, and I thought, I think this is intentional. Oh, that was you did a very good job of disguising the inside with the outside. They were all such a surprise when you open them, because they are very stately and calm on the outside, and then you open it, the inside is this explosion of feasts or people wrestling, or your structures were very engaging, very dynamic. I really enjoyed that part.
Oh, thank you.
I'm curious that, go ahead.
Could I ask a question, Celine?
Please.
So Colette, the richness of what you explored and what you made books out of is so extraordinary. And I'm curious, have you had experiences that you just couldn't fit into a book? That were so larger than life that they just weren't translatable into a book?
I'm sure I've had lots of experiences that I couldn't put in a book. I have hundreds of photos still.
Yeah.
To create new work, and everything that I made while we were sheltering in place or quarantining for the past couple of years is just all old footage that I have. but I think I can't think anything right like off the top of my head right now, but I have favorite places in China that I visited, and one of them is I was just talking to an old friend that I met in while I was in China in the mid '90s. She was a Fulbright anthropology student, and we just got back in touch, and we met in a place. She did her dissertation in a place called Dali, which is in Yunnan province, and I have a distant aunt that lives there, and that was one of my favorite places to visit in Yunnan province. And I had a close connection since I had an aunt living there, and I visited, dozens of times, but I never made a book about my experiences there. So I don't know if it's that if something is too close, I don't want to make work about it, or it didn't. Yeah, so I'm not sure, but yeah, there's lots of things that I've not. Yeah, I don't know exactly though.
It's just I too feel like I've been traveling with you. It's just, even via the keynote, it's really extraordinary.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry I missed seeing you at Codex.
Oh, you were at Codex too?
Yeah.
I kind of on a related note to that, Colette, are there things that you felt like you couldn't or shouldn't photograph? Either I thought about it when you mentioned that you had photos from the Uyghur area, and I know that that's a problematic region in China. There's a lot of questions about how they're being treated, and you focus a lot on the different ethnic minorities, and so, does the government know you're there taking photos? Do they care what you do, or do you have to be careful about where you go and what you're photographing and what you make books about, or is it exciting enough that they don't interfere?
So when I first started taking pictures in around 1994 or 5, it was in Yunnan province, and because my great grandfather had been governor of the province, I had a lot of connections with the government in Yunnan, and since he was, he was a powerful figure, and he was Yi minority, so I don't think that they really, I traveled a lot and I went to a lot of places that I wasn't supposed to go to, and I didn't actually tell them either. I had to kind of hide from them, because if the government knew I was going to these places, they would go with me, and then I wouldn't have any freedom. And then all we do is eat and drink, eat and drink. I found that nobody really cared what I did, and everything that I portray, I make sure, well, not so much now, but in the past, it was, especially when I was doing my Fulbright, it was, I didn't want to make anything that would offend of anybody that was depicted in the images, and China in general. So I tried to, and I specifically was trying to do it with kind of like a naivete, like a child's point of view, and focus on nothing too intrusive. And as your question as have I seen things, that I didn't want to photograph, a lot of things. And I never photographed anything that portrayed something that they wouldn't want a photo taken. Because I lived there in 1994 to 1997, and as a young woman, just traveling around China, a lot by myself. And they thought I was a local, so I just saw a lot of things.
Sarah.
Yeah, I'm interested to ask if there have been opportunities to show any of your completed work in areas where you had been to do photography.
Areas that I have done the photography?
Yes, for instance, you know, have you ever had occasion to be able to show work based on your Yunnan photos in Yunnan and so on?
No, I haven't. And I was just actually looking online today, and there's a photography museum and artist residency in Dali, Yunnan, right now, but it's closed, you know, with COVID. But when it reopens, that's the first thing I'm going to connect with that place, and because that'll add. You know, I think I've been doing this project for so long. I think that seems like a natural next step.
Yeah, I hope you'll have some good opportunities that way.
Oh, thank you. I saw there's a question about bound feet. The bound foot almost looks like a hoof. Was this part of a reason for this binding to bring in the aspect of the beauty and symbolic luck of a horse? I have not read anything. I did read a lot about foot binding, and I did not ever read anything about the symbolicness of the horse hoof. What made the foot binding a concept of beauty, especially if up to 40% of the population had bound feet? This would be more than a status symbol of wealth, as lower economic status women would be included in such a large percentage of the population. What made the foot binding concept of beauty? So one thing that I put in the colophon of that book is talks about a legend, a possible. There are three common tales about the origins of foot binding, and one of them was that a concubine had danced beautifully on top of a golden lotus adorned with precious gems for an emperor, and she danced so elegantly that women with status started copying her and wrapping their feet tightly to dance to look like her. And then eventually somehow that evolved into foot binding. So that's one of the most common stories that attribute to foot binding. And there's lots of different theories about it. And there was a book that I started to read about it, but it's very long. Cinderella, something about Cinderella and foot binding. I recommend Dorothy Coe wrote it. So if you're looking for some light reading.
Did you see the other there's another question about how you store your creations?
Oh, yeah, they don't take up much room. And an average book folds up to 12.5 by 17 by 3/4 of an inch. So I just have them in a drawer. And then the larger books I just keep in the closet. And then Malpina asked, please talk about the egg book structure, the engineering part. So the engineering part of the egg structure, the shell, the white part, is based on a kirigami structure called slice forms. And slice forms, you can find, if you just Google slice forms, you'll see lots of templates online. Slice forms is also the basis of, that pop-up card company, Love Pop. Love Pop makes these pop-up cards using, intersecting layers at 90 degrees. So you just kind of do that, and then that, and then that, and then that. And then it's like those structures are like a diorama where there's 4 layers, horizontal layers within the kirigami 90-degree intersecting layers. And then the structures are attached with string to the cover.
I noticed in the beginning when you were talking about how different things were between when you were there in the 90s and then when you went back in the early or late aughts, I guess, and how you said, but if you went out of the main town, you could get into an area where things are more traditional, and you had that picture of a very traditional looking fire dance. And then down in the corner, one of the fire dancers was wearing a pair of modern running shoes. And I really thought that was an amazing juxtaposition of here's a very traditional dance form, very traditionally, and yet still modern life is creeping in. This is a photo that couldn't have been taken, 20 years ago because the shoes weren't there yet. So it was, I loved that little crossover there in culture.
So actually, one book that I didn't highlight today is a Tiger Festival, was similar to the fire dance. And I attended that festival in 2008. And then recently, I guess in February, it's around Chinese New Year's, the Lunar New Year, I attended online this year's festival. And it was being live streamed on Facebook by a French radio station. And the costumes were completely different. The costumes that they were wearing in 2008 were hand woven. They were felt, and they were supposed to look like tigers, but actually had long ears, so they look more like rabbits. But this year's festival, they were wearing machine printed leopard print fabric. So yeah, it was very modernized now.
Right. So there's an ancient festival, I mean, that they've probably been performing for thousands of years, and now it's on Facebook with machine printed fabric.
Yeah.
Probably not such a great photo opportunity as the more traditional costumes. Those were such amazing costumes. Those were really, really.
But a lot of the locals, they prefer the machine printed fabric, I guess, because they couldn't access those fabrics in the past.
Oh, so they seem special.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like things go like that. In the beginning, hand embroidered, hand woven textiles were not as expensive as machine made ones because they were inaccessible to a lot of the people. And then eventually it goes back to the hand woven is more precious. But
right. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn off the recording. At least I'm going to try.